Anybody want to go for a ride? Enduro model.
Dual sport.
Sorry, corrected by the cameraman. Dual sport. So obviously turn signals, take it on the road, no problem at all. Engine by Teo. So this is a kind of a collaboration project apparently. Engine CCs, 400?
350.
350, okay. So perfect little mid-size engine. If you're going to go enduro riding, just go enjoy gravel roads and trails. No question about that. So, usual showroom series approach. How much time is on this, Ray?
0.
0. So it's been pushed around and moved around so we can see our little travel rings. Fully extended is 230 mil. So we've got some research to do to figure out where maximum travel is and mark it, obviously. Now, because they're telescopic forks, they're not as stout and robust as upside down forks where this piece of the tube is down here. So you may find that when the bike is ridden going into berms, it gets a bit of movement in the frame because there's a lot of lateral stress this way, because this is bigger and thicker than this is. So usually, certainly when these bikes get up to a high level of use, a fork brace goes on here which connects these two legs together and adds about 30% rigidity to the front end. So if you are not just getting mud on it to say you went off-road and you're actually riding the bike off-road with intent and purpose, you may find a fork brace. It would be very, very helpful. So a little bit of homework to find travel out, but just pushing it around. Already at 135 millimeters of travel just pushing the bike around. So that would suggest perhaps that it's pretty soft. So let's check it and find out. Now there's no external adjustment and the position of the forks is at the joint of the cap and the tube. So we're not quite at maximum extension, but we're quite a ways up. There's really no room to push the forks further down if the front is too soft. So let's bounce the front. Normally, you want it to go through a bounce and a half. And we're getting 2 1/4. So that would suggest that if this was me and my bike, the forks would be off immediately. I'd find out what the oil is, and I'd double the viscosity in the bottle. So if it was a Putalene 5, I'd go straight to a 10. Because there's no resistance at all to the spring damping, so it's bouncing too much. So in the trails, you're just going to keep losing the front. Very simple, cheap fix with the correct oil. On the rear shock, first test is static sag. And we have plenty of that. Then, how do you adjust it? Well, as usual with every off-road bike, we have hidden rings to adjust, which is going to make it extremely awkward. And again, we are going to require in here a drift and a punch to tap it around. And when you're doing that, just make sure that you spray it with some lube before you take it out when it's brand new. Break that top ring free, soak it again on the bottom ring, then put a little bit of grease on, and if you can, move it. Now, where it's at right now, I'm right at 82 kilos. So I'd probably, we are at 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd probably go to 6 threads right out of the gate for me at 80 kilos, just because there's so much static sag. The nice part is down the bottom of the shock in here, we can see the silver shaft. The silver shaft is actually, compared to the shock body, it is very thick, which means really good damping. The bigger the shock shaft, the better the damping is. We can see it, the rubber bumper's there, so we can immediately judge, are we good enough on preload? So we don't have any options here other than preload, because we can't change the oil like we can there. So at this point, how does the back of the bike bounce? It's nice and slow, just like an off-road bike should be set up. And then if we push the whole bike, then the front's going to bounce more than the rear. which is what you'd expect. Longevity depends on the gas oil mix in the shock, how long it will last, and the level of abuse the bike is put through off-road. The faster and harder you ride it, the sooner the oil viscosity is going to break down and the gas pressure will diminish. The front, well, there's lots of things we can do there with springs, oil, or volume, preload spacers. There's lots of tunability for us at home if we want to work on things like that to make it better. But with the shock, we're very limited. So that shock will have an expiration, I won't say date, but time, where damping is going to be absolutely double bouncing, and then it's going to be very difficult to ride on the trail. In terms of the pegs, rubber pegs, which is interesting for a dual sport bike. We're looking...
Removable inserts.
Ah, thank you, sir. Removable inserts. So we just push these in and the rubber comes out. So you want them in for street, keep them there. If you don't, take them out. Excellent. So it's 6.5 inches or 165 mil for your boot to here. And then let's switch to the shift side. Now obviously this gap should be bigger because you've got to get your boot underneath it. The other piece is if you stand up a lot, then the shift is going to be high. There is no shift rod to adjust, so we have a bolt and a spline. So if you need this deeper or higher, you just extract the bolt, move it one spline and put it back in, and the splines are very fine, which is nice because it won't move a huge amount when you do it. So this side is obviously wider. It is 195 mil or 7.75 inches. So much more room in here to shift and move with your boot for both street and off-road. In terms of the levers, clutch is not adjustable. Gap on the clutch to the bar is 100 millimeters to the ball. So 100 mil works out to be 4 inches roughly. On the brake lever, it is 75 millimeters to the ball, or 3 inches. The interesting part is your brake lever is 140 mil or 5.5 inches. And the clutch lever ends right there. It's considerably longer, 7.5 inches or 190 mil. So your brake lever is going to be basically 1 or 2 fingers, that's it. And obviously on the dirt, you're predominantly your rear brake anyway. The front brake is merely a speed correction. So interesting that levers and gaps are dramatically different brake to clutch, but that's not unusual on an entry type motorcycle where the clutch is much further away because of the angle bend, or the shoulder comes down and then the arm comes off at a very acute angle, whereas here it doesn't. So you might have to, if you're like me with short stubby fingers, you might have to replace the clutch lever with something that has less of a severe bend here, because we can't loosen this clutch lever and bring it this way in order to bring the narrow part of the lever further across to meet our second finger. So unfortunately we've no lateral movement this way. You've got no movement this way for your brake lever to get it further away, and it comes halfway along the grip. It doesn't come to the full length of the grip. So there's a little bit of consideration ergonomically there as to what you want to do. Last piece for me is always one that gets missed. How wide are the bars? Because it physically depends on your shoulders. How anatomically are you across your shoulder width? And end to end is 820 millimeters, which is 32.25 inches. So if you work with your hands all day, then your fist, entire fist, including your thumb, is outside your shoulder. If you pound a keyboard all day, your second knuckle is in line with your shoulder. So if that's the case, and we sit on the bike, let's get in the right position. There it is. My thumb is way, way outside my shoulders. So for me, it's a little too wide. The other part is, look at the height of the clutch lever. I got to do this. So my fingers are almost above my wrist. Look at the angle of the brake lever. It's way down there because you're going to be stood up a lot. So can you readjust the levers to the right angles for you? Because the longer your spine is, the sharper your down angle is. The shorter your spine, the flatter your arms are. So in doing that, you need to figure it out. With an off-road bike as well, one of the other parts is standing up. Where are your hands? So my hands are above the bar. So given my spine length and arm length, it will be good for me to get a riser of some type to bring the bars up probably another 15 mil. Then when I'm standing up riding on the gravel, I am not here bent over doing this, which is highly uncomfortable. I'd much rather be here with my knees gripping the tank and my hands comfortable here. So with off-road, there's a few more considerations you should take compared to road. And the last piece of the puzzle realistically is this gap. That is 425 mil or 16.5 inches. So what that means is, if I'm going to assume this position where the seat puts me, is this more comfortable for me? Is this more comfortable for me? Or is that more comfortable for me? So each time I do that, my back is arched the wrong way. So for me, what's more comfortable would be here. So I might want to change the handlebar out for a pro motocross or an MX bar because it comes straight here and straight out there. It doesn't curve back at all. So based on your spine and arm length, this bar may need to be changed. Now there's plenty of room. If you need to shorten the bar, that's possible for somebody to fabricate and move things in for you and save you buying a bar. But check this gap and see what's worthwhile. So at least at that point when you're sitting on a bike, you can evaluate the ergos, you can evaluate the suspension, mark your travel, understand what adjustments you've got, and then when you go ride the bike, you have much more knowledge and a much better ergonomic setup for you.